But you don't understand how you're going to die with me, Peter. Jesus said, if you're going to follow me, you got to deny yourself and take up your own cross. Peter's thinking, I'm going to be crucified with Jesus. That's not what Jesus was talking about, was it? Deny yourself, take up your own cross. Crucifying that flesh is not easy, and there's very few in this hour doing it. Crucify that flesh that is in opposition to the will of God, because that flesh can't do the will of God, people. It'll make all kinds of promises. I just recently was pulled over by the police. I was tired one night bringing my daughter home, and I wasn't paying attention, and I got pulled over. And as soon as, even before he came to the window, I was saying to him, I apologize, officer. And I meant it. I meant it. And he must have got convicted by that. And I said, I apologize, officer. I didn't mean to speed. And he was the nicest police officer I think I've ever met. And usually they are, right, when they give you a warning. But you know what he said to me when he handed me the warning? He said, all I ask is you make me a promise that you will do the speed limit the rest of the way. And at the time, I meant it when I said to him, because I don't make very many promises, and my daughter's in the car, and I looked over at her, and I said, tell the officer how often I make promises, because I don't believe in making a promise you can't keep. And I looked at the officer, and I said, I promise. My daughter looked at him and said, not very often. He doesn't promise very often. And I looked at the officer, and I said, I promise. Well, you know what happened that night? I didn't keep the speed limit. And every time I caught myself going over the speed limit, and the reason I didn't keep the speed limit, again, was because I was tired. And I thought when I had said to him that I promise, I thought, well, I'm going to go get on the interstate. I'm going to go back the other way. I'm going to get on the interstate. I'm going to put it on cruise control, because that's the way I usually drive. That way I don't go over the speed limit when I'm tired. And it didn't happen that way. I missed the exit. My daughter was talking to me, and I missed the off-ramp, and I ended up getting on a back road to take her home, and I couldn't use the cruise control, and before I knew it, my daughter was looking over and saying, Dad, you're going over the speed limit. I didn't keep my promise. But I didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't know I was going to miss my exit. I didn't know I was going to, miss the off-ramp. So we don't make promises, folks. What if I would have looked at the officer and said, I'm sorry, but I can't promise you. You know what he would have said? He would have said, okay, he probably would have just laughed or just said, well, just try, and still given me a warning. But you know what I did? I did what Peter did. Though all forsake you, Jesus, I won't. I promised the officer. He's there for our protection, people. There are still some real, true police officers. And I believe he was a real one. He was the real deal. And one last one I'll give you before I end the broadcast here. My wife and I went to see my mother. We were in North Carolina. We went to visit my mother, so we flew to New Hampshire. And I didn't have my own car. And I had a rental car. And we were out on this highway, and I wasn't used to that brand new car that I was driving as a rental car, so I was going way, way too fast. Didn't recognize how fast I was going. In fact, I was going so fast with that car on the interstate that I probably would have lost my license if the guy would have gave me a ticket, if the officer would have gave me a ticket. This is exactly what happened. God put a word in me, gave me a word. When he came up to the window, the words that came out of my mouth was, "Officer, I didn't mean to break the law." And you know what he said to me? He said, "You didn't break the law." He gave me back. I started to hand him my driver's license and my registration. He handed it back to me. He said, "You didn't break the law. Have a nice day." He turned around. My wife saw this. My mother saw this as witnesses. He turned around and got back in his car. Okay? He didn't even take my driver's license or my registration, and I was just doing this way over the speed limit. I probably could have lost my license. That's how fast I was driving. Why did he say that? You didn't break the law. Because when I said to him, in truth, because I was sorry, not before him, but before God, that I broke the law. When I said that, he was convicted not by the laws of the land. He wasn't being convicted by the judicial system and what backs him as an officer here in the United States. No. He was convicted by the truth. And he couldn't handle that kind of conviction. And so he wasn't about to give me a conviction. He couldn't even handle the conviction that God was giving him. And how is he going to convict me? How is he going to stand there? I don't know to this day what happened. All I know is God worked a miracle for me. And I want you to understand, people, that is conviction. I didn't get the ticket. I was forgiven of that ticket. And that man did not pursue the conviction. Jesus said in a parable, two men walking along, one has wronged the other one, and Jesus said, you guys better iron out your problems before you get to the judge, or you're both in trouble. Do you know that's what Jesus Christ is saying in this hour? He's saying you all better get your problems ironed out. How do you get them ironed out? You come to Jesus, and you accept his forgiveness. You accept his conviction of truth. We're all sinners when we come to Jesus. Every one of us, not one, is righteous. For all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. And when you come away from that conviction, and you've been forgiven of that conviction, you won't stand pointing your finger of anybody else. That's the conviction we need, people. Not standing pointing our finger. Jesus didn't stand pointing his finger. No, he didn't. The law does. The law stands pointing its finger. You have sinned. But Jesus said the law came by Moses, but grace and truth came by Jesus Christ. Jesus doesn't stand with his finger pointed. He stands with his arms open for forgiveness, acceptance. We stand there before a pointed finger and we condemn ourselves. Jesus didn't come to condemn. He came to forgive, to deliver people. But the one that stands there with his arms open today will one day stand with not a finger pointed, but with the sword. He's coming in judgment. He will bring all to judgment. Today is the day of salvation. Now is the accepted time. He doesn't just want to convict us. He wants to kill that flesh. He wants to kill it, people. It's the flesh that's our enemy. That's why Paul said, If you walk in the Spirit, you will not fulfill the lust of the flesh. He wants to purge us. He wants to cut away that flesh with the truth.